We're here with our good friend Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. We are in the Service Hawk Digital Media Studio. Oh, I am. Chris is joining us remote, but good morning, good sir. SEC Unfiltered in the building. How are you today?
Blake, good morning. I'm doing well, man. I'm trying to focus on you, but Wheezy F Baby right behind you is staring me right into my soul. So a lot of love for Lil Wayne, one of my favorites growing up, but doing great, man. Yeah, it's a busy time of year. As you know, Blake, obviously we're in crossover season with March Madness still in full swing. Obviously the baseball season only heating up and, spring football because football never sleeps. So it's an exciting time to be a sports fan and excited to chat with you.
I saw you tweet this out yesterday. It's like people were asking, or somebody was saying something, and I know you had tweeted like, it is the best time of year. And I think to myself, Chris, I don't work this much during football season. Now, I watch a lot of film, but I'm sitting in my studio or I'm sitting and I'm just watching. This time of year, we got women's like you said, March Madness. I'm out there at spring practice, and then I get a text like, hey, man, Zach Cohen going tonight? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's just so much going on that I'm like, dude, this is insane. But it's also very good, and March Madness picks back up tonight. Very quickly on that, I don't talk a lot of basketball. Me and you've talked about this off record, but who do you got in all of this? Do you think Florida is going to be the team that takes this whole thing, or what?
So, Blake, my pick going in was the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think I've got to stick with Bama right now.
Why Bama?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the number one overall national seed, which is Auburn. I think offensively they've got a little bit of a ceiling that could limit them at some point, although, I've liked their path to this point. My question with Florida was just they were playing the best basketball in the country for like the last month, but it's like, can you stay hot through 6 more games? Right. I just think Bama's that team, man, kind of sneaky. The thing that scares you with them is turnovers and some of the inconsistencies, but they've got as high a ceiling as anybody. And like offensively, when they really get rolling, and I love their path to the Final Four. Their big game will be in the Elite Eight. They're probably going to take on Duke, which I still think they'll be able to handle Duke with that, with a Duke team that hasn't really been tested the way they will against Alabama. So listen, Blake, what I'm really pulling for is an Alabama-Auburn national championship because I need to see, the world needs that level of toxicity, and the state of Alabama would probably set on fire if those two teams met in the national title. So, yeah, I mean, that's ideally, I would, as many SEC teams as we can get in the Final Four, that's what I'm pulling for. But I'm going to stick with that national title pick and go Bama. They were the favorites in the preseason. I think you could argue they have the highest ceiling and the most talented team. So, I'm going to roll with the Crimson Tide.
As long as the Gulf Coast of Alabama doesn't burn down and y'all let me go through spring break with my kids who have been asking me to go to the beach for the last, 3 weeks, which we are going during spring break. But, I mean, I will be okay with that. I
was going to say, Blake, there are probably some folks tuned to the show when they heard me say that the state of Alabama burned to the ground. They probably weren't too upset hearing that.
Oh, heavens no. Heavens no. I mean, you got to realize the last 18 years, Nick Saban terrorized our ass.
Yeah.
Now, we got him back a couple of times. Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, whatever. We got your ass a couple of times. But absolutely not, Chris. They would want – if Alabama could leave the Union and just leave the Gulf Coast and they could go to, Gulf Shores or whatever in the shit, they would probably be really good. But I do agree. I do think Bama's really good. You're right on Florida. That does worry me. I mean, teams in basketball, that'd be a 13-game stretch where you have wins there. That's an insane thing to do in any sport.
It's such a streaky game. It's so hot and cold. I mean, even game to game, it's a game of runs. So, I mean, I think Florida's very good, and I think they're going to be more than likely a Final Four team. But, I mean, they messed around and almost lost to UConn. So, in a single elimination tournament, man, it's really, really difficult to predict. But like I said, the path getting there, the team they have, I don't know, man. Something told me Nate Oates and Alabama. So, listen, I'm due to get a pick right because my gambling picks in March Madness have been just miserable. So, hopefully I can at least get that pick right.
You know what I do when it comes to March Madness and betting? I don't do it.
Yeah.
I don't do it. I mean, because I don't know enough.
Probably a smart man.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody was so mad at me last year because I was doing the football, and I'm like, why would y'all pick spreads? Y'all are idiots. Take the singles every time. If you hit a single every time and you pick the money line, you're going to win. It's like I'd pick 14 teams on a money on like a parlay and I get like one wrong because I stupidly picked a money or a spread instead of a money line. You know the teams that are going to win. Stay away from the bad games. Go to the good games that you're in. And then, hey, if you get $45, that's $45 I didn't make. I bet, $5 to make 45. Thank you for the $40 surplus. That's how I see it. My conservative having Italian ass.
And the sharps are so good too, especially this time of year. So, but I mean, Blake, listen,
Troy kicked my ass last year. Never bet on Troy.
Hey, the degenerate would tell you though, Blake, it's really not about winning or losing. It's about the thrill. So
no doubt. I'm screaming at the TV on a Tuesday night for Maction.
I mean, look, there's nothing better. I mean, you could argue there's nothing better than that. I mean, that's why we love Maction and Fun Belt. Give me all that on Tuesday, Wednesday. You made a good point too, Blake. I would say I always tell people this time of year it's a different kind of busy. I thought you made a good point. So it is
definitely a different kind of busy.
Different kind of busy, but because there's more games, right? Football's 95% of us just talking about it, and 5% of the time we're actually watching the game. It's kind of the inverse with baseball and basketball, where we're actually getting to watch endless games and we find different things to discuss. But it's a lot of fun, man.
You can't decompress either. I found
and you can't overreact, although
right.
Many do.
Well, speaking of overreaction, there's no bigger overreactions than there is when it comes to the college baseball world, and that is what Chris Phillips, a former college baseball player himself, is going to join us to do this. Look, I'm not going to even waste. Normally, I waste my time and wait to talk about LSU last. I got to talk about them first. Chris, there's a lot of overreaction in the Bayou, I feel like, because you lost a good series on the road to the SEC. And I was talking to you, and I know you said it on your show as well. Chris, losing to a top 5 team on the road in the SEC does not bother me. Like, why am I am non-bothered by losing a SEC series here. I mean, I guess maybe I'm just like, hey, this just happens every year and we just cover it. But I mean, LSU did lose to Texas. They go into against Mississippi State this weekend. I know you picked the Tigers in y'all's pick'ems this weekend to rebound here. I guess, what have you seen from LSU here recently? What have you seen from Mississippi State recently? And how do you kind of view that series going into it?
Yeah, I mean, Blake, starting from the LSU side, obviously we've talked a lot about it. This is a team that's incredibly deep, as you all know, offensively on the mound. I think the one thing with LSU, and you and I have talked a bunch about, we've debated who has the best freshman class in the SEC because there's just so many great freshmen in this league. And I think LSU, you can obviously make an argument, maybe Tennessee, I think right up there, probably 1A, 1B in the conversation. But when you're relying on young players and you're relying on freshmen, again, you go on the road, like you mentioned, a top 5 or top 10 opponent in this conference, and a Texas team and a Texas program that was obviously going to be really fired up, their first ever SEC series at Dish Falk. I think you saw some of the things that can happen, some of the things that can go kind of sideways. Here's the good news. You'd rather take those licks now than, for whatever reason, you glide through the regular season, you never faced any adversity, and your first time getting punched in the face is in a regional or is in a super regional. Like this is what it's for, right? Is to figure out who our guys are, throw them into the fire and kind of see how they react. So listen, I said it last week. I'll say it again. You don't win the College World Series in late March, and you don't lose it either. I would say you can if you put together, a lot of bad back-to-back weekends, but that's not what LSU is doing. So I told you this, Blake, off the record. I said it on the record as well. It's not about if, it's about when. Every single team in this league is going to get punched in the face. They're going to run into adversity. And again, it's not like you lost at home to Missouri. Like, you went on the road and played a really high-quality Texas team, and that series could have gone either way. I mean, it was a coin flip. But I love this LSU team. Again, 1 through 9, they can beat you, Blake. We've seen that all year long. The youngsters like a Derek Curiel, so much fun to watch. And then obviously on the mound, what they're doing. I still think it's one of the best weekend rotations in the conference. I know you want to see more consistency from a guy like Anthony Ianson, but a guy like Cade Anderson every single Friday night is going to give you a chance. And these young guys are going to be great, man. I mean, Kassan Evans, William Schmidt, fantastic players. I mean, some of the best arms, some of the best young arms, I think, in the conference. So I really don't have a ton of concern when it comes to LSU. Again, how do they respond? I expect them. The good news is you're back at the box. This is kind of a rivalry series, right? This isn't going to be one where you're in any way overlooking the opponent. Mississippi State going to have their full attention. You asked me about State as well. They've been scuffling. I mean, Mississippi State's been scuffling. The one thing I will be excited to see, because obviously it's a Thursday through Saturday series, so they'll get going tonight at time of you speaking, Blake. The matchup between Kate Anderson and Pico Khan, that could be a really, really good one.
They
Pico
just announced that Pico Khan's going on Friday, so they're not even
okay. So they're going to pitch off then. Okay,
yeah, they're going to pitch off. And listen, I'm not trying to like rudely interrupt you on that.
No, you're good.
That scares the shit out of me because now you just mentioned Ianson. Now you have Ianson versus Pico Khan,
and that's probably why they're doing it. I mean, I would imagine because I mean last week, Blake, Pico Khan on the road outdueled Kyson Witherspoon from Oklahoma, who I think you could argue low-key is the best ace in the conference. Like I
agree with that.
Nobody's really paying attention to him, I think, because it's still like it's, Oklahoma's the new team in the SEC or one of the new teams, and they kind of fly under the radar, right? They're not a blue blood college baseball program like some others in the conference, but Kyson Witherspoon's a dog. I mean, he is double-digit strikeouts, seems like every single weekend. Pico Khan went out there and outdueled him. So it's a smart move, I think, by Mississippi State. I think it's an interesting move. And so, LSU's lineup, it'll be a challenge for them because Khan has pitched really well against everybody. So, but obviously, big thing, win game one. That'll be the key for LSU. I think you feel really good about Kate Anderson going out there, winning his matchup. And then, we'll see on Friday when Ianson goes. You need a bounce-back start from him. So, no, I mean, it's, the bottom line, take 2 or 3, protect home field. I know LSU fans, they want to sweep. Probably nothing less will suffice the getting rid of the nasty taste in the mouth from the Texas weekend. But no, I expect LSU to bounce back. Like you said, Blake, I did pick LSU to take the series. I think they're going to protect the box. And again, Mississippi State has been scuffling because again, you win game 1 in Norman, you drop games 2 and 3 in games that you really feel like you should have won. You feel like you had an opportunity to win the series, you don't do it. They've been sputtering kind of in the lineup, a lot of inconsistencies in the lineup, and really beyond Pico Khan. It's been sort of an adventure. So I do think LSU is going to bounce back the right way and take the series.
Well, the thing about Mississippi State that worries the outright shit out of me is I feel like this is Chris Lemonis has got to win this series.
He's under a lot of pressure right now. I mean, looking at their fans, social media, and beyond that, yeah, I mean, there were many that were ready to move off him last year, and so. I mean, hey, here's the thing, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm going to say this. I understand, Blake, LSU, I know what show I'm on. But, like, you talk to them, they believe they have the best baseball program in the country. Like, that's their belief.
Oh, I know.
They feel as if they should operate that way at minimum. And so, for them to be getting the results they're getting and the fall off for Lemonis since 2021, I mean, yeah, it's is it 100% guarantee he's going to be gone? No, but he's got to start winning. So, and what better way for them than if they went into Baton Rouge, took 2 out of 3, that maybe would be like the spark for their season. LSU got to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, look, they've taken 2 of the last 3 series. The last 2 have gone to state. And listen, I don't give 2 Rudy Poos what anybody tells me. Ace, their third baseman, he's hurt. He's got a lower body injury. He still has 8 bombs. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to tell me their best hitter who's hurt is still producing the way that he's producing. Technically in this series, Friday and Saturday, go out there and leave something up in the zone and see what happens. Like, I don't get, like, that's the thing about the SEC and like losing last week to Texas. I told you off air, I said this on the show last night. I thought Texas has the best 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters in the country. You better get out 6, 7, 8, 9. You better get them out, because if you don't, and you go back to the top of that lineup and there's dudes on base, Galvan, Flores. Dude, Flores is insane. I mean, his pitch selection is insane, what he swings at. But even Ballou, the Big 12 player of the year, right? And I don't think – and I'll get to A&M and Schloss in just a moment and that whole situation that's going on there. Shit. People thought that they might come out of here sputtering. Shit. That's a good-ass baseball team you just played, and you went on the road. So, look, you're right. LSU's got to respond. Pun intended with this.
You have to your point, Blake, not to cut you off, but you just have to acknowledge Texas is one of the best teams in the country. I even said it on our show earlier this week. We were talking.
I'm screaming in here. People jumping.
No, I mean, I mentioned it that I get it, LSU fans. Everybody tuned in. I know everybody's pissed how good Texas and Oklahoma are. I understand. It's like if LSU would have gone on the road and lost to Florida or lost to a team that a blue blood SEC team, it still would suck, but it's the fact you lost to Texas. And
you go to Knoxville and you lose 2 or 3. It's
right,
okay. We understand.
Right, you're like, hey, tough one. We'll get them next time. It is what it is. Here's life in the SEC. But it's the fact it was Texas. So I get it, but we just have to acknowledge. I mean, you got to tip the cap and say the Schloss effect is real, and the Max Wiener effect. Which, yes, get your yucks out. I know the last name, but Max Wiener effect is real, dude. What he's done with that pitching staff. I mean, yeah. Unless you got the Wiener over the weekend.
Side note. Okay, hold on. The telecast for the games this weekend, when Wiener would come out to the mound if something was going wrong or whatever was going on, they would literally say, and I quote, "Here comes the Max Wiener," and I'm like, dude,
oh my gosh,
dude, this is like kids are watching this now. It is his name. I get it, but I mean. Come on, dude. Here comes the Max Wiener. Anyway.
Great dude, great pitching coach. I think one of the best assistants in the country. So, yeah, for what it's worth.
I thought last year, side note on him too, I thought last year the way that his pitching staff attacks the top of the zone is arguably the best that I've ever seen. Because, listen, if you're throwing 95, we're going to throw it up in the zone. Now, we might give up some hits, but the problem is they got to catch up to it. And I think that has been – Chris, for me, the lefty Volantis, I mean, he threw 7 straight fastballs, okay, to come out of the pen. All of them were above the belt, right? Like they were borderline right above the belt. And so that for me is like, that's not him doing that. That is a pitching philosophy, even that we saw at A&M last year. Speaking of A&M, we'll go around the SEC here. Chris, we talked about this when you came on last time, but we talked about this, me and you, off the record. I said I wouldn't go public with this. I'm going to go public with it today, and you can vouch for this conversation. I think that they are arguably one of the most talented teams in the entire country. I think that they have a really good friend that's their head coach, and I think that is their problem. I am not trying to throw shade. I am being dead ass serious. I'm not like I throw a lot of shade Texas and Texas A&M's way. I mean, you of all people should probably know that more than most. But I'm being dead serious about this. Chris, Michael Early's decisions coming out of the pen, it was a conversation that you and I had, that has killed them. It's not been what's going on in the rotation. Coach Kelly, the new pitching coach, I think has been fine. Chris, he is making the wrong decisions every single time. But the thing that surprises me, and even them going into Kentucky this weekend or going into a series with Kentucky this weekend, I know that you picked A&M. They struck out 20 times on Friday. They struck out 14 times on Saturday. And then I think, 16 or 15 times on Sunday? And I'm like, listen, it's not your staff that's been bad. You cannot hit the baseball. So you're still staying with A&M this weekend versus Kentucky. I don't know. Well, let me just ask you, what do you see there with them of why you think that they can take it in College Station this weekend versus Kentucky?
Yeah, and Blake, I think all of your concerns are justified, and I've voiced many of the same. And I'll tell you this, I'll go as far as to say this, and they won't do it, which, whatever. But if Texas A&M loses this series at home to Kentucky, Michael Early should be fired by Monday.
I agree.
It will have reached a point to where, if you are sitting there 1-8 through 3, or maybe even worse, 0-9, God forbid,
Chris,
3 SEC weekends.
They cannot come back.
You cannot come, and we're not even talking about come back from the standpoint of, oh, will they revert back to being the number 1 team in the country and national title of bust. I'm talking about just making the postseason. Like if you don't win this series against Kentucky, you can kiss your postseason hopes goodbye. Like we try not to overreact in baseball.
Lynn Rollins is smiling somewhere.
But Blake, at this point, it's not an overreaction. Like I love people saying, like, man, we're still early in the season. No, we're not. We're halfway through, which is terrifying, but we are. I know it's early in SEC play, but you only get 10 of these weekends. Blake, we're going to be a third of the way through after this weekend. Think about that. So I am going, with all that being said, though, and all the concerns, the starting rotation's been great. I agree with you on, and it's, funny how we talked about this in the non-conference. There was like, man, why did you make that move? Then they hit the home run, and what's happening? And I mentioned this to you off the record that these decisions, they're small in non-conference, but they will become very, very big, and you will not be able to hide from the fact, this decision-making, if it backfires, in conference play, because that's where all the focus is. To your point, it's continued. I mean, look at Alabama. You lost 2 games in the 9th inning. One of them, you're cruising, you change pitchers, everything goes to hell, and you lose the game. Right? That's the difference, right? So, I mean, the lineup, though, is the big thing. I'm watching the Vandy series last weekend. Jace Lavalette, gets it going game 1 with a big home run. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to get off the schneid. They get shut out the rest of the way, essentially. Like the group of talent they have for them to be playing as bad as they are is truly inexcusable. It is. Now, They get Caden Sorrell back this weekend. I've been talking to some folks down in College Station. They are getting Caden Sorrell back, which I think is going to be a huge boost for them. We'll see what Gavin Cash looks like. He's apparently been dealing with back spasms. So I think he'll probably go, but he could not play in the midweek game just because of the back spasms flared up on him. At some point, Blake, I'm going with A&M because I'm just banking on the fact that at some point, talent's going to rise to the top, and they are at some point. You got to get off the schneid at some point, man. You just – this is the most must-win of must-win series that I think anybody's ever had. Like, A&M, you should be playing this week in all 3 games like it is the last baseball you will ever play in your entire life. Michael Early, it might be the last baseball he ever coaches as a head coach if they don't take the series. Like, straight up. Because, I mean, Blake, he ain't going to get a job after A&M if this thing keeps going the way it is. He's not going to get a head coach. Not at this level, he's not. So, I'm going with Texas A&M. I think at some point, as good as the starting rotation is, even if they don't swing it well, Blake, I got to believe that with Prager, Lampkin, like, they're going to pitch their way to taking 2 of 3. And Kentucky's really scrappy, but I don't even think it's remotely close when we're comparing talent. And you know as well as I do, at some point, talent shines through. But I will say this, Blake, game 1 for them is really important because if you lose game 1 and it's here we go again, baseball's so mental, it can snowball at that point. So if you can take game 1, get your first SEC win, which is crazy to say, get your first SEC win, have something to feel good about. Then you got Lampkin on Saturday. You're like, okay, like we're getting back. We're getting on a roll. We can maybe put together a winning streak. I think that's really important for the Aggies. But, I mean, dude, they've been the story of college baseball, but not for the reason that we thought they were going to be. I mean, the fall from grace has been – it's been unbelievable. And it's – sometimes I think we can put too much emphasis on coaching. We put too much of the blame on coaching. But look at what Texas is doing. Look at what A&M is doing. And think about what has changed. I mean, it comes back to one guy. It has to. It has to come back to one guy. The players didn't all of a sudden just suck overnight, right?
Right.
I mean, you got the number 1, maybe will be the number 1 overall pick, Jace Lavalette. Right. He is seeing ghosts. Like that whole lineup is. It's like something here, man. This league is all about responding to adversity. And, like, I don't know that A&M, I don't know that they have that voice right now to respond to adversity. And like you said, your coach being your friend, you might think it's not the move, man. Like, they need to fear you. They need to respect you. I listened to some conversations, and I got nothing against Michael Early, obviously, but I've listened to some conversations with him, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. So time will tell. But if they lose the series to Kentucky, Blake, again, I would let go of Early by Monday. It's just it'll be so painfully obvious he's not the guy to get that thing rolling.
Couple of things there. This is the worst team when you're feeling so much pressure on you. This is the worst team to play in the conference, Kentucky, because everything that they do generates pressure on you to be great and for you to make plays. Chris, they did 3 double steals this past weekend versus Auburn. First and third situations. I mean, your butthole gets so tight you couldn't fit a Grease BB in it, right? Like, I mean, I don't mean that as a joke. I mean that, like, legitimately. Yeah. Like, you cannot.
They're going to bunt. They're going to steal. They're going to hit and run. They're going to force the issue because, again, They know, hey, we probably don't have as much or more talent than you, but we can out-fundamental you. Exactly. And we can do things We can do things that nobody else is going to do to you. Again, you can practice PFPs and bunt coverages and defensive stuff in practice, but when you get in game speed, I mean, it's like defending the option, Blake. I mean, going through it in practice is one thing. Going through it on game day, it's a little bit different. At game speed in front of 80,000, when the pressure's on, the lights are on, it's a little bit different of a vibe. So that's kind of what Kentucky does to you. But yeah, I mean, dude, I don't know if it's hard to predict the bats all of a sudden come alive and they score 10-plus runs in 3 straight games. But again, Blake, I'm going with A&M.
That's the crazy thing. They can do that. That's the wild part.
You're right. Here's what I'll say, though, Blake. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this series because, in my mind, A&M should come out, I mean, hungry, desperate, dugout should be fired up. Like everybody, again, you should be playing these baseball games like it is your last baseball you ever play. If they're not doing that, if that's not the energy, that's an even bigger problem.
Well, it goes back to the head coach. Listen, A&M, you were the number 1 team coming into Baton Rouge last year. Josh Pearson hit a double down the left field line. By the way, they were 2-8. So you literally had it happen to you a year ago where a team is like death or we're not going to a regional, and that is a fact. Chris, another team, one more team that I think people have thought would be really good but kind of has faltered out of the gate, Florida. I mean, listen, the difference with Florida, as you've mentioned on your show, the injuries have been a problem with them. I still think people are a little taken back by it a little bit. I guess, what have you seen from Florida the first 2 weekends?
Yeah, I mean, to be 0-6 in conference play, I don't think anybody saw coming.
No.
Especially, listen, you go on the road weekend number 1 to Tennessee, defending national champs, number 1 team in the country. They looked unbeatable at that time. East Tennessee State had different plans, and Bama game 1, give Tennessee credit, they bounced back the right way and took 2 out of 3 there at the Joe. But at that time, again, nobody was playing better baseball in the country than Tennessee. And you look at those games, 3 competitive games. Game 2 got away from you in the 7th when it was 1-0. Game 3, you had the lead, and Tennessee comes back. It is what it is, right? Then you go in the midweek, you beat a really good Florida State team at their place. So you're thinking like, okay, you're getting rolling. Then you go into the Georgia weekend and talking to folks down there. I mean, game 1, it was yours for the taking. You give up 2 runs in the top of the ninth. They're having some bullpen issues. They're having inconsistencies from guys like McNeely, guys like Philpott. I mean, Philpott especially has been, he gives up the lead in the top of the ninth. In that game, we're talking, Blake, after the midweek where they just played Florida State and Jacksonville. They've got a 4-3 lead. He goes walk, hit by pitch, walk. So bases are loaded. Ground out to second to tie the game, and then a grand slam, they lose on a walk-off. I mean, it just it can't happen.
And the guy hit for the cycle on that.
And the guy hit for the cycle on that, too. So it just can't happen. But you mentioned the injuries, Blake. They're not going to make injury excuses down there, and they're confident they're going to get it turned around. But, yeah, I mean, they've lost a lot. I mean, Liam Peterson didn't go last week against Georgia. Their ace, their number 1 guy. I think he is supposed to go tonight. He should be good to go. They've had Cade Curlin, their second baseman, who it sounds like from, again, folks I've talked to down there, per sources, it sounds like he's probably going to take the red shirt. He had the injury, came back, but I just don't think he's fully there, and he's played hurt before, so I think he's probably going to take the red shirt because I think it's a 30% of the season rule.
Yeah,
is how much. That's when you have to decide. He's getting to that 30%, so I think he's probably going to do that. But, I mean, their center fielder, Kyle Jones, is out for the year. Frank Menendez, their top lefty arm out of the bullpen, kind of like their lefty specialist, 7th inning guy. He's out for the year. Jake Clemente, their Sunday guy, has dealt with some back stuff. I think they're going to move him to the bullpen. So they've just dealt with all kinds of injuries, man. It's been one thing after another. And, I mean, listen, Georgia, a team that was terrible at their pitching staff, terrible at walking people, hit by pitches, free passes. They came into Gainesville, just did none of that. I mean, it was just Georgia's weekend. And obviously they smashed the baseball all weekend long. So Georgia came in, kicked their ass. I mean, it is what it is. I still think this Florida team, that's the difference with them and A&M, to your point, Blake. Like, I was there in person and watched Florida play a pretty good Miami team, take 2 or 3 from them. Like, I've seen them play good baseball. and beat quality competition. That's the thing with A&M. I haven't seen them beat anybody. I haven't seen them at any point even flash and be like, oh, there they are. That's the team, which is so – that adds to the fascination of how ridiculous that situation is. But Florida's not that. I mean, this series in Oxford this weekend at Ole Miss, huge. Because, again, you need to get off the schneid. And Ole Miss is a good team. But preseason, I would have told you this is a team Florida should beat, and I know they expect to beat. But, again, when you're staring 0-6 in the face and you got to go up against Hunter Elliott, Riley Maddox, a really potent Ole Miss lineup at their place with the beer showers, yeah, it's going to be tough. So I think they're obviously still confident, Blake. They're going to get it turned around down there. But, again, there is a sense of urgency talking to them because, again, it's not early in the season anymore. We're in weekend number 3. I mean, we're going to blink, Blake, and it's going to be weekend number 8 and 9, and we're going to be in the month of May and talking about the SEC tournament and who's going to be going where, who's going to be hosting. So you got to get your ass in gear quickly, and I know Florida knows that.
Skip Berkman used to say that you got to figure everything out by tax day, April 15th.
Yeah.
I'm going to push back on the only thing that I've ever disagreed with Skip Berkman on. Here it is. I think that was right when you had 12 teams in the conference, because if you got into a situation where 8 teams in the SEC, 8 out of 12, right, made it into the regional or postseason, okay, that it is what it is. Chris, you have 16 teams now. I mean, some teams are going to get left out. So, God forbid you lose the series, but you take one and you're 1-8. 1-8. Chris, I'm telling you, they're mathematically they can come back, and anything can happen in baseball. It is baseball. It's like opening day of Major League Baseball today, and the Colorado Rockies and the White Sox have already been eliminated from the playoffs, right? Like, I mean, it comes to that point where if you don't win this weekend, Chris, all right, and it's not like Florida.
I'll put it to you this way, Blake, not to cut you off, but I look at this Florida team a lot more like last year's LSU team than I look at.
I can see that.
Like from the standpoint of they have just started with a gauntlet. I really believe that. I mean,
I'm with you there.
The way Georgia and Tennessee are both playing, I'm like, they've got some very winnable series upcoming. You've got this Ole Miss series tough, but you've got Vandy at home. You've got Missouri at home. Like, you're going to have some opportunities to stack some wins. But I agree with you. It's got to start this weekend. I'm going Florida. I think they get off the schneid. Yeah. I think Liam Peterson's going to come back, pitch well. Dude, Ole Miss's staff got rocked against Missouri.
They did.
So this is the week. You said it. Mizzou can swing it.
All right. Now,
hey Texas. Texas having to go to Como. Don't let them sleep on that one now. Don't sleep on it.
I'm not going to predict that because it'd come off too petty. The Texas.
Hey, I'm just saying that's a weird play. I mean, good teams have lost series there, man.
Chris, they won 9 games in the conference last year, and they're better than they were a year ago. All right. Y'all go right on ahead and play around with them. Like, everybody says that they're the worst team in the conference. Where I agree from a pitching staff perspective, yes, they are. Not shit if I own it. Shit. Let them get to the plate. Chris, they barreled up. So look at Ole Miss and LSU. What did they do on Saturday? Okay, every time you're like, oh, this team sucks, let's just throw a fastball. Ping, ping, ping. And I'm like, all right, go ahead and throw another fastball in there and see what happens. It happened to Ole Miss last weekend. Now, again, they're 0-6 too. And, Carrick has said that, look, we're another year away. We got to get some staff in here. But, Chris, from what I understand, 6 or 7 of the 9 that are starting will be back. So, we'll see at Mizzou. All right. You've talked about Georgia. The problem that I have in the SEC of like biggest surprises so far, okay, in the SEC is, for me, it's Georgia at the plate and Arkansas at the plate. They were both top 5 teams coming into the season. I'm like, why should I be surprised? When you look at both of those teams, are you any surprised that they're just absolutely demolishing the baseball the way that they are?
Georgia, I'm not necessarily surprised. I think the fact that they're leading the country in home runs after losing Charlie Condon is a little bit surprising. Like, the fact there's just been like no drop off after you lose the Golden Spikes winner. I mean, that's right. But I knew the offense was going to be good. It's Arkansas's offense that is more surprising to me. I mean, Blake, I said this going into the season. If Arkansas can finish in the middle of the pack in the conference in hitting, they're going to win the SEC. because they're going to pitch. And they haven't even pitched great at this point. Like, Gabe Gackle has not been the preseason consensus preseason All-American that many of us thought he was going to be. They are still very good on the mound, though, with guys like Zach Root, and they've got Beetleshees coming out of the bullpen, and tons of other guys. But the way they're swinging it is terrifying. I mean, it is truly terrifying because, again, the pitching is going to be fine. It's death taxes in Arkansas spinning the baseball really, really well and being at the top of the conference in ERA. But what they've done swinging it, man, has been really encouraging from an Arkansas standpoint. So, when I talk about biggest surprises in the league, I don't even go there, Blake. I look at I didn't expect an Alabama to be as good as they are. I mean, Alabama's got to be one of the biggest surprises in the conference. Auburn's a surprise at this point to me, as good as they are.
Yeah, and they killed the portal. They absolutely did.
Yeah, Auburn absolutely did. They attacked the portal as hard as anybody. I think Bama's probably the biggest surprise, though. I mean, I
agree with that.
As good as I didn't have really high hopes or expectations for them, and to see the tear that like a Justin LeBron has been on, the way a Brennan Norton has filled in at second base after their starter got injured, so many big swings to the bat. A guy like Will Hodo, big swings to the bat. He had the big one against Texas A&M in the top of the ninth, at least one of those games that led to a win there. And then what Zane Adams and Riley Quick have done, I think, becoming one of the best 1-2 punches in the conference. They got a really interesting series this weekend against Oklahoma. Really tricky. Our entire staff, myself included, is going Bama at home, which scares the absolute hell out of me because Oklahoma is a really, really good team.
Speed.
Yeah, really, really good team. This is just to speak on a weekend perspective. Like, it's interesting. We don't have like the headliner series we had last week, like LSU Texas, but we've got a lot of really, really, really. We don't have a great series. We got a lot of really good ones though, like a lot of really interesting.
Like Arkansas and Vandy.
This is when it feels like the most chaos could happen. You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
It feels like it's a weekend where everybody's agreeing. Like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's no dub. Bama's going to beat Oklahoma.
I mean, for LSU.
Yeah, I mean, it's – yeah, to your point. I mean, I was the only one that went LSU last week, and it burned me. So, but, hey, I will get crawfish and gumbo, so it was worth it.
You will. Here's what I'd say on Arkansas. To your point, last thing, I'll get you out of here. I told you 20 minutes. We're 37 minutes into this thing. Here's what I'd say. You've been hitting really well. That Vandy staff can be tricky. And I'm interested to see if you can.
I will be at that series. I'll actually be in Nashville this weekend. We're taking the tour to the Hawks, so they're still going to let me in even after picking Arkansas. But no, I'm excited to get a look at both those teams. It's one thing, like Blake, to watch these teams on TV, and we're keeping up with so many. Really excited to get a firsthand look at both these squads, and I'd say especially Arkansas. I went with the Hogs just because I still think Vandy, which is even more of an indictment on A&M. It seems like it comes back to them so much. But Vandy is very limited offensively themselves. And, I mean, they just shoved last weekend. So I just don't know. Like, if they can't swing it at a higher level, I don't know. Which is weird to say that I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up with Arkansas's offense. That's not something I expected to say in the preseason. But it's the reality of the situation, the way the Alloy brothers and Iredale and, the rest of that lineup, the way they're swinging it, I just don't know that Vandy's going to have enough. But if we know one thing about Vandy, man, they're going to pitch, they're going to play good defense, and you do that gives you a shot.
Well, and you know what? It could justify why A&M looks so off. If Arkansas goes in there and they look bad, you'd be like, okay. I mean, Vandy might not be able to swing it, but they can definitely throw it. Last thing. Not only is Paul Maneri falling out of the dugout, he can't win an SEC game when he's not at LSU. Yes, that I'm going to leave here being a little petty.
I don't blame you. I mean, totally fine. I mean, listen, and they've got
they look worse, Chris. They look a lot worse.
Yeah, they're bad. South Carolina is really, really bad, and the fall from grace for that program it's wild, man. I mean, I remember, I've talked about this a lot. I remember, being a young cat and watching them and you used to see that South Carolina jersey, and it was like
terrified. You'd be terrified.
It strike the fear of God in you. Like when Ray Tanner was there, you just knew you were in for one hell of a weekend. The same way people look at the LSU jersey right now, Tennessee, Florida, etc. It's just I don't know, man. I mean, they are what they are, which is just not very good. And I thought from the jump that Paul Maneri hire was a little odd. You know, it was so out of left field. I remember you and I talking about this last year. It was so out of left field and so random. And I mean, here's the thing. I'll say this for Maneri. They just don't have the dudes, man. I don't think anybody coaching this team.
It's a full-blown rebuild.
It's a full-blown rebuild. Like, if you want to blame somebody for this year's team, you probably should more so blame Monty Lee, who's on staff. Like, he's been there a while. He's the one that recruited a lot of these guys and handpicked them. So, I mean, you didn't think to recruit some pitchers along the way? Like, their pitching staff is I mean, Blake, they gave up double-digit runs to Arkansas last weekend in every single game. They host Tennessee this weekend.
I know.
And Founders Park, it should be warm weather. If the wind's blowing out, which it normally is, Blake, that place is a bomb box. Like,
I know.
What's stopping Tennessee from scoring double-digit runs every game? Probably nothing. So,
Tennessee is the only thing that will stop Tennessee this weekend.
Right, exactly. So, no, listen, man, I thought it was a pretty off-the-wall hire from the jump at best. I give the Maneri era in Columbia 3 years max. I don't think he's the answer, man. Well, I see him and I know for you, Blake, it's probably very weird because you're like, this man, he's an LSU man. Like, I know it's a really odd relationship. I am fascinated by when LSU goes to Columbia the last weekend of the season.
Oh, they're gonna want death.
Yeah, for the emotions, and I mean, there's a reason they're not sending Paul to Baton Rouge, but like, I just. Every time I see him in the uniform and I hear him talk, and I'm like, this is weird. This is weird. I don't know, man. I don't really know what. I think they were hoping that hiring Paul Maneri, he is the current wins leader in college baseball, that it was going to provide this national relevancy shot in the arm. But they're so bad, man. You're not able to capitalize on it.
They're going to have to go spend a lot of money.
Yeah, they're a mess, and South Carolina's a place where I don't think you have the unlimited NIL resources you have some other places. So they're kind of picking and choosing, I think, Blake, between how much money goes here, how much money goes to football, how much money goes to basketball, women's basketball, etc. It's weird. It's almost like at that place, man, for one sport to do well, another has to suffer.
I agree with that.
I think a lot of SEC schools are probably like that. Well, I mean, like you said, men's basketball, they didn't spend any money hardly in NIL, and they were awful. I mean, it's just – and then you look at baseball. Like, I mean, they went and grabbed guys in the portal, but they weren't Danny Dickinsons. You know what I mean? They were –
Chris, LSU's infield costs more than the entire basketball team.
Right. So, it's that's the world we live in. You got to make – you got to put your money where your mouth is. You got to make it priority. Yeah, this South Carolina team, are they going to win a series? I think so. They've got some decent players, but –
they ain't winning this weekend.
No, they're not winning this weekend for sure. If they could just take one, I think that would be the biggest
upset in the SEC.
That's a massive win for them. But the reality of this team is this, Blake, short and sweet. They have no pitching. Their starting rotation might be the worst in the SEC. It might be as bad as Mizzou's is. And in the lineup, I mean, poor Ethan Petrie. The dude's one of the best hitters in the conference. He's one of the best hitters in the country, but he's just got nobody around him to protect him, and he's on such a bad team that nobody's even going to talk about him. So, South right now, I would say this team is more than likely going to miss the postseason.
I do agree. All right, Chris Phillips, this is Unfiltered. I said 20 minutes. I kept him for 43. I wish your Braves nothing but bad success. You know what's crazy? Have you been to the new stadium, by the way?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do. I love it, man. True.
So my son, all right, I keep saying I'm getting you out of here, but I got to tell you this. My son, the first Major League Baseball game he went to, my brother lives in Woodstock, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. You know, I forget what it's called, but when you walk into the stadium, that's all those bars or whatever.
The Battery. Yeah, the Battery. Yeah.
Ben walks in through the front gate. He's like, Daddy, do I get to play baseball here? It's like, well, if you keep listening to your dad, then yes, you will one day. You know, I will admit, by far the best sporting experience for me as an adult came from that. I was absolutely blown away by the experience of the Braves. So opening day of Major League Baseball. Good luck to everybody there. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered.
Chop on, Blake. Chop on.
We are in our Ellie De La Cruz phase. in the Ruffino household.
Okay.
He watches Ellie De La Cruz like he's going out of style. Dude, but which makes me have to watch Ellie De La Cruz highlights. By the way, when he gets home, he's watching Ellie De La Cruz highlights on YouTube. It is a fact. I promise. It's
not a bad guy to emulate, though. I mean,
it's not. And listen, it is 24/7. Well, look, I grew up in a baseball family. Like my grandfather, 30 years, my uncle, 30 years, head coaching experience. I know it's in his blood. Like I get it. It's 24/7. Ellie De La Cruz. I'm like, this is insane. And then Tommy Tank's got the spring training hit. He's like, hit the tank. And I'm like, we don't yell at the TV, buddy. We're just inside. So anyway, I'm sorry, but Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. They will see you guys tomorrow for y'all's baseball coverage, or y'all going tonight for the Thursday stuff?
We're going today. So the wind up every Monday, Thursday, noon Eastern. We rock and roll, either previewing the weekend, predicting, or obviously recapping. And we talk the midweek as well. And then Friday night spikes. Yeah, we'll be live Friday night. Every single Friday night, we go live, chop it up, shoot the shit, take questions. It's a really, really good time. One of our favorite segments of content we do every week. So, yeah, we're all over the place.
Series, I want to be on Friday night spikes.
That's what I'm saying. Friday night spikes could get really, really interesting. So, I mean, even if they lose game one, because we still have a lot of Aggies that tune in, God bless them, and they're kind of using our platform, whether it's the wind up, which is what we call our bi-weekly college baseball show, but Friday night spikes especially, they're coming in,
freaking out,
using it as a vent session. So listen, it'll comfort you and make you feel they know how bad they are. They know, and now we've gone through grief. Now I think they're on to acceptance. So
I have a whole gummy ready for Friday night spikes for me.
Hey, we've already learned half a gummy is too much. Go a quarter.
See y'all soon. Peace.